Chapter 22! Yay! We're seriously almost done. I don't think anybody can comprehend how excited I am for this book to finish. Like, holy shit. Okay. Chapter 22, in which Denton's job is changed. After their morning in court, Denton took the Newsies, all except Jack, who was back at the refuge, a prisoner, nah shit, for lunch at Tibby's. They all wanted to know why there was no story about the rally in the Sun or in any of the other newspapers. Because it never happened, Denton said grimly. Never happened, David said. We were there. We saw it with our own eyes. We lived it. Yeah, said Blink. I got a black and blue mark right here to prove it. Right here. He didn't actually point, but that's what I'm gonna guess. Whatever. Oh, he actually does. He does, okay. And he lowered his head and made a part in his hair so that Denton could see the result of a bull's nightstick. Poor Blink. If it's not in the paper, it never happened, Denton went on. The boys were looking at him in such dismay and confusion that he had to go on. It probably went something like this. Mr. Pulitzer calls up Mr. Gammon and invites him to his mansion for dinner. Mr. Gammon, he says, you know that polo pony of mine you've always admired? Take it as a gift. And Mr. Gammon, about the newsboy strike. Don't you think there's more important news to be covered? Like I said, I don't know that for sure, but I'd guess it went something like that. So, you quit, right? Racetrack said. You wouldn't stand for nobody muzzling you? Denton hung his head. Mr. Gammon called me into his office this morning. I've been reassigned. I won't be covering the strike news anymore. He got up from the table. You boys enjoy your meal. Eat all you like. It's all been taken care of. I've got to get back to work. He started to walk away, but David ran after him. They bought you off, he said angrily. They could have blackballed me from every paper in the country. I'm a newspaper man. That's all I know how to do. Without a paper to write for, I'm nothing. He looked at David sadly. All of a sudden, he seemed very old.
Yeah, he's a little old to be hitting on 16-year-old boys.
He's a little old to be hitting on 16-year-old kids. Here's the story I wrote about the rally. I want you to at least to read it. He took a few typewritten pages out of his inside jacket pocket. Right by his heart. Aww. Here's what I think of you and your writing, David said, grabbing the pages from him and crumpling them into a ball. He stalked back to the table. We bust Jack out of the refuge tonight, he told the Newsies as he sat back down. From here on in, we depend on nobody but ourselves. Les picked up the crumpled papers, smoothed them out, and proceeded to wrap an uneaten knockwurst in it. Journalism had been put to worse use. David had a strong sense of life repeating itself as he led Spot, Boots, Blink, Mush, and Racetrack through the deep shadows along the wall of the House of Refuge. The only difference was that this time, he was carrying the rope and the railroad spike. He was in charge. He was the one who had to pretend to be courageous and set an example for the rest of them. It occurred to him that having people depend on you to lead them was a fine source of strength. He stopped and pointed to a barred window halfway down the block. That's where we saw Crutchy. Boots was assigned to stand watch at one corner, Racetrack at the other. The gargoyle stared down at them, bemused, as David prepared to toss the rope. Suddenly, Boots hissed urgently. He was peering around the corner, wide-eyed. The others joined him. What is it? David asked. Just take a look, Boots whispered. By the flickering light of the street lamps, they saw an elegant carriage waiting in the courtyard of the refuge. A team of horses, worried by the mist, neighed restlessly and pawed at the cobblestones. Clearly this is like zombies. That's my only answer for this. This would make the whole book so much better if there were just zombies. Then I would like it much more. The carriage rocked slightly at first as one figure, and then another climbed into the vehicle. They were unmistakable. The first wore a tight-fitting black coat and a top hat. Nigel Snyder. The other was Jack. Where are they taking him? Mush whispered. Only one way to find out, David said. Meet you back at Newsies Square at midnight. Fucking Newsies Square. The carriage moved off into the night, and David ran after it. As it picked up speed, he left off the back bit and hung on tight, trying not to get jostled off. He couldn't figure out exactly where the carriage was taking him, but he did notice that the houses were getting bigger, more stately. Then he couldn't see the houses anymore, only the stone walls that surrounded them, covered with clinging ivy. Finally, the carriage turned past a stone gatehouse and approached a mansion of such magnificence as David had encountered only in his dreams. No sooner had the carriage stopped before a pair of huge oak doors than David leapt from his perch, dashed across the lawn, and hid behind a hedge. He couldn't believe he was doing this. Studious, well-behaved David Jacobs, planning prison breaks, hitchhiking on carriages, trespassing on the rich. Who knew how far he might go before the night was through? A uniformed butler welcomed Snyder and Jack into the mansion. David turned and followed their progress through the window. It was queer, watching them, but not being able to hear their words. The butler led Jack into another room, but intervened when Snyder tried to follow. David crept along, keeping to the cover of the hedge until he came to a window that looked into the room where Jack had been taken. It was a wood-paneled study with elegant brass lamps and tall-backed leather chairs. Over the fireplace was a huge oil painting of a man with a pointy red beard. Of course! It was Pulitzer! This was Joseph Pulitzer's mansion! And to make David's astonishment complete, a moment later the doors opened and Pulitzer himself appeared. If only David could have heard what they were speaking about, but the well-glazed windows of the mansion kept their secrets from prying ears. Chapter 23? In which Pulitzer makes Jack an offer. Pulitzer sat down in an easy chair and motioned Jack to the chair across from him. "I'll stand," Jack said, reluctant to accept any charity from the great publisher, however small. He was prepared to refuse an offer of brandy and a cigar, too, but it never came. "Know what I was doing when I was your age?" Pulitzer asked. "I was in a war. The Civil War." "I heard of it," Jack said. "You win?" Pulitzer ignored the act of arrogance. "People think wars are about right and wrong, but they're not. They're about power, and the power of the press is the greatest power of them all. When people read something in my newspaper, they believe it. I have credibility. I tell the city how to think, how to vote. I shape its future." I love his hand motions all the time. Ridiculous. "There's just one future bothering me," Jack said, examining a silver ashtray, "and that's mine." "Then let's talk about your future, boy. You can stay locked up in the refuge, or you can be free come the dawn. Free and clear, with more money in your pocket than you could make in a year. Are you trying to bribe me, Joe? Stopping me ain't gonna stop the strike." "I disagree. I've been watching you very carefully. You're the spirit of the strike. All I ask you to do is go back to work selling the world." "Nothing so dreadful about that, is there? A man has to work if he's going to keep his self-respect." "You mean scab on my buddies?" "Nice chatting with you, Joe, but..." Suddenly Pulitzer rose and loomed over him. His sheer physical size took Jack by surprise, and his very presence, his power and self-certainty, made the boy shrink back with fear. "Listen to me, boy," said the voice. He said in a voice of tempered steel. "This is no game. I'm offering you a chance and you won't get another. Work for me until the strike ends, and without you it will end soon. Make no mistake about it. And then you can disappear. Go someplace far away and start over again. Away from the refuge, away from the poverty and the filth. You'll be a free man with no past and a pocket full of coins. I'll give you a chance that life has never given you, but defy me, boy, and I'll break you. I have no choice. Go back to the refuge and think it over. Give me your decision in the morning." Since David couldn't overhear the conversation between Jack and Pulitzer, he decided to make better use of his time by removing the linchpin that tethered the horses to the carriage. It was no simple task with the driver standing there, waiting, but by stealth and patience he managed the job and returned to his hiding place behind the hedge, holding the big, oily pin in his palm. As soon as Jack and Snyder emerged from the big doors, David shouted, "Jack, come on!" Jack tore away from Snyder, slid down the banister, and leapt to the ground. He fell into step beside David, and the two of them ran as fast as their legs could carry them down the long drive that led to the outside world. "After them!" Snyder screamed, leaping out to the carriage. The driver snapped his whip and the horses took off, leaving the carriage behind. He was yanked from his perch and dragged a few hundred feet before he could untangle his hands from the reins. Snyder gnashed his teeth and took his fists in impotent fury. The boys kept running until they were out on the street, and then Jack stopped. "What's the matter?" David panted. "Gotta keep going." "You shouldn't have done this, Davy," Jack gasped. "They could put you in jail." "Don't worry about me. You're the important one, the one the Newsies need. You go to jail, what happens to your family? You don't know nothing about jail, what it does to a person. Thanks for what you done, Davy, but you better get out of here." "I don't understand," David said. I don't neither. I don't understand nothing no more." He shook his head miserably. "Just go, will you? Get out of here. Go." David hesitated. They heard a clatter of horses' hooves and angry voices coming from the direction of Pulitzer's mansion. "Go!" Jack screamed at him, pushing him away. David ran.